Hello and welcome to the Toppers Talk at Ecoholics. Today we have with us Yash Jaluka. He secured AIR 4 with economics as an optional subject in 2020 examination. The result came in 2021. Currently he is serving in Haryana as an IAS officer. So welcome Yash, welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Yash, this discussion majorly on your personal journey, insights, syllabus coverage, majorly we'll discuss about answer writing, challenges that you faced during your preparation, but all related to economics as an optional subject. Because students were asking like how we can prepare for economics as an optional subject. So I thought it's better to listen from directly from you. My first question, Yash, why did you choose economics as your optional subject? And how did your background influence this decision or any other decision that influenced that I should take economics as an optional subject for my UPSC civil services?
Thank you for having me here. Why did I choose economics? I think it was a pretty straightforward decision. My background, I did my bachelor's and master's both in economics. So, given that, I think it was a natural choice for me to select economics. As the syllabus for UPSC mentions that the questions in economics will be slightly higher than the honors bachelor's level, but lower than the master's level. So it was right in the sweet spot for me because I had done my master's. So I thought that the questions and the syllabus were quite approachable from my perspective. So it was a natural choice.
So do you think like economics favors those people who have some kind of economics background or any non-economics background students can also take this subject?
I don't think so. Anyone can take economics as an optional. Unlike, say, more specialized subjects like mathematics, which people who have traditionally done engineering, they pick those optionals. But economics, a lot of students from non-economics backgrounds have taken this as an optional and successfully cleared the exam with a very good rank. The advantages that economics offers is that, say, out of the two papers, one is slightly advanced version of the GS3 paper, if I can say so. So the questions are based on Indian economy, and you have to answer them from a more specialized point of view. But it's still very approachable. So if anyone can, cover those books, those research papers needed for paper two, then I think it's a pretty approachable paper and a very scoring paper at that. The paper one is of course a technical paper, and it while it does give some advantage to someone who has had a background in economics, but I don't think it's a very challenging thing to master. You can go through those textbooks if you're reasonably smart. I think those materials can be covered by anyone.
Because when I talk to the students of economics option, they see that paper two looks easy on eyes but difficult to write. That's what, because it's opinion related. But in paper one, it's like Heckscher, Olin, Herod, Domer. If they are directly asking, you have to replicate the same thing written by them. But when you see economics as an optional subject, the preparation, how do a student or an aspirant target their marks between paper one and paper two?
You start by optimizing and trying to maximize, so to speak, the marks in both the papers. But conversely, uh, मैं थोड़ी देर बाद paper two, despite along with looking the easier paper, yes, it's a slightly more difficult paper to prepare for, I would say, given that the syllabus is largely an open field. So that makes it slightly challenging because you do have those books, Uma Kapila and Mishra and Puri and all those books, but it's not restricted to them. So students find it difficult to approach it once those books are covered. Like, what do we do after that? But once they have a fair idea of what to do after that, it becomes an easy paper to prepare for, and also a very scoring paper. Paper one, while it is a more a bounded paper, a closed paper, but it is far more challenging to score in. So I think if you look at the marks distribution also, most of the people will have a higher marks in paper two, and a slightly lesser marks in paper one.
So that was the same strategy you also followed, like paper two, I need to score more in comparison to compensate the paper one.
No, I did not have that thing in my mind ki I need to score more in this paper. When you're preparing for this exam, every marks matters. So you are putting in that effort to maximize your marks in both the papers. But I mean, as it happened, I scored a higher mark in paper two compared to paper one, but I don't think that anyone plans for that.
Generally, students of economics fear from mathematics, statistics, and econometrics, and generally they have the concern that is it the part of the syllabus or not? And just by having your like real life experience of this examination, I just want to state you that the syllabus does not contain any mathematical, econometrics, or stats part. Even though they ask few questions of equation based numericals in macro and micro, how did a person tackle, or how did you tackle, and how can a person tackle these concepts?
Fortunately or unfortunately, economics has become a very mathematical subject when you study it from an academic point of view, not from this exam's point of view. And this exam does not have that mathematical orientation as of now. Indian Administrative Service exam, the Indian Economic Service exam does have a mathematical bend to it, but it's still a very approachable thing. In the civil services exam, I think you get only a few questions on say Kornu model or something, or some ISLM questions in the paper one. But other than that, it's a pretty straightforward paper. There is no mathematics or anything. I, as such, did not face much problems. My background was I did my master's from Delhi school, where the entire course is a very mathematical course. So you tend to get used to that rigor, so to speak. Yeah.
How did you balance your economics optional with GS? Like students want to understand how much time you devoted along with the GS. People say 4 months, 5 months. Then they say like 2, 3 hours per day you have to devote to optional. Initially, when you are starting the preparation, what was your schedule?
So I think our year was a slightly peculiar year because it was affected by COVID. So we had some extra time of around 4 months um, before prelims. I can't strictly say that my timeline was the appropriate one, or my routine was the appropriate one. Uh, but mm, Assuming that COVID had not happened, my preparation strategy was as follows. I started with economics when I started my preparation, but I realized that it's taking me some time to get into the groove of that, because I was not used to studying for that amount of time initially, right after college. So then I switched it. I switched to GS completely. I did not touch economics. After say 2 3 months of doing GS, when I was reasonably confident of my GS preparation, that I have some base in that, and I know what the exam is like. When I've gone through the past year papers and everything, then I started with my optional preparation, and in that, I think it took me some 4 months to prepare my optional, between say September to mid-January or something. I don't remember clearly, but I think 4 months was the approximate time that it took me for the for the first iteration of my preparation. Yeah.
And how many times you revised before like writing the mains?
So between prelims and mains, I think I revised it thrice. And before prelims, I think I would have revised it a couple of times.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how important is like handwritten notes while preparing for economics optional? Did you make handwritten notes or digital notes or something like that?
So for paper one, almost all of my notes were handwritten because I wanted to practice the diagrams and all of those stuff. That was not possible for me to do on a digital medium. I mean, it's possible. A lot of people have made their notes digitally, but I was not comfortable doing that. I thought because exam may I have to draw those from pen and paper and by hand, so it's better to practice them from now only. Paper two was I made all my notes digitally, and they have been uploaded online because I wanted to have that flexibility to revise it, to edit it whenever I want, because it's a very open paper. So yeah,
It requires like easy to update when you have one word
absolutely,
files and
absolutely. Mm.
so a lot of students are having the confusion like paper two sources. They have Uma Kapila, it's like a storyline since independence. Then they read newspaper, they read EPW magazine, not all the articles, but some commentary,
Mm.
which is helpful in issues. So obviously, how did you approach and how like 2025 aspirant should approach this?
Um, my so paper two, I went through the blogs of several people who have cleared it. Abhijit Sinha sir, Tejasvi Rana ma'am, Gaurav Agarwal sir, Aranyak Saikia sir. He is my senior from college also, and a few others. I went Abhimanyu Gehlot sir, the most important, I think. His blog helped me a lot. I went through their notes. I went through their strategy of the notes and everything. That gave me an idea that it's a slightly advanced version of GS. So I have to prepare it like that. The answer structure has to be more or less like the GS paper only. Issues, the problems, the solution, the evaluated part, and everything. But from a more with a more academic orientation to it. So that was the challenge, how to mix both of them. Topics are more or less same between the two papers, so that was not so much of a concern. But so I started with Uma Kapila. Initially, I topic wise I used to go through that book, but right after I would finish a particular topic, I would Google, just simple Google. I would Google, and if I had, if some topper had listed some paper which is a landmark paper in that particular area, I would first go through that paper. Some papers I would read in entirety. Some papers I would just, read the abstract and the conclusion of it, or the results part of it, to get the meat out of that paper. And but that was nowhere enough, because all the toppers, their exam year was at least 2 3 years before mine. So because this is such a dynamic paper, you need to have the latest data, the latest information, the latest research at your hands. So after that, I would also Google. I had an EPW advanced subscription, so I would use the EPW as a nice search feature, the advanced search feature. So I would use that. I would try and find as many papers in that area as I could, and just note down the references of the economists, the arguments, one line, two lines. I mean, you don't have to know the entire paper's arguments in depth, but even if you have the crux of the paper in a couple of lines, you can use that to enhance your argumentation. So once I had, say, for every topic, I had, say, 5 6 7 10, whatever the number suits that particular topic, different references I would have. Then I would start making a story that, every economist has given a different argument for that particular topic. So just to take an example, the inverse relationship between productivity and land size, for example, in agriculture. A lot of debate has happened over this. A lot of research has happened over this. But and it's a frequently asked question also in the civil services exam. So I went through a lot of papers in this, and then once I had some understanding of the issue, I would then form my own opinion of it. And I would then use the references, the arguments given by economists, to buttress my opinions. So, for example, if I want to say that yes, there is an inverse productivity, inverse relationship between productivity and land size, then I would say, say that, okay, these are the arguments in its favor. These are the economists who also argue against this, that this is the evidence against this. But why do I think, or why do some economists think that this evidence does not really hold? And using that, I would make the answer as a debate, as a professional, as an academic debate, and then arrive at a conclusion. So I think the right way to look at every question in the economics paper too is that it's a research paper that you're writing. थोड़ी देर बाद that it's a research paper that you're writing, and you have to consider the different opinions and then arrive at your own conclusion. So every answer has to be looked at it that way. That was my approach, at least. So
Yeah, because exactly the paper two is more opinion based and they want you to take stand. So you should have all the sides of that particular
yeah,
topic.
yeah,
Topics like inclusive growth, yeah, I understand totally that exactly students needs to do. If I talk about paper one now, paper two, like majorly you said that it's like fodder you have to collect and how much you can write depends on that. It's like
yeah, yeah,
why to read 3,000 words when you can write 100 words only? So it's like
yeah.
taking small lines and making and forming the opinion. I just want to understand one last question in paper two. While reading the question, how much time a person should invest? Like if you say 20 questions, 180 minutes is like 9 minutes per question. And obviously that's not mechanical. Sometimes you invest more, sometimes you have to invest less. How much time an aspirant should read the question or invest in reading the question then writing the answer? Like it's like people generally jump onto the writing the answer. So how much time do you think like reading once, twice, or while writing the answer in between also you go back to the question and read it again so that you remain on track? What was your approach?
Uh, I mean, I don't think that question should really bother anyone. I mean, it's a very individual think. I mean, some people have a very quick grasp of the question. Some people are slightly more careful with the approach. Some people have a good reading speed. So I think whatever suits you in that exam hall doesn't really matter. You cannot have a set strategy for these things that I will, I will read every question twice or thrice or whatever. I mean, whatever suits your fancy in the exam hall. And when you practice at your home with the tests and all, in whatever suits your approach, just pick that.
It's total customizable and
Yeah.
I understand. Let's move to paper one. Yes, in paper one, there are variety of subjects. Like when we write paper two, it's like we remain on the same zone. It's Indian economy only. But in paper one, it's like from micro to macro to growth, international. You have to keep on switching. What was your approach in reading or preparing those subjects, like at random, or were you completing the subjects micro first, macro second, or something like that? What was your approach?
No, I think I would do it subject wise. First, I would finish a particular topic. Like you said, we have to jump between a different school of thought, a different area of economics in that paper. So you have to be consistent. The same approach which you are applying in micro cannot be applied to say public economics or macroeconomics. So I would finish a particular paper and then I would switch to the next one. Finish a particular area of that paper and then switch to the next one.
Okay, so it's like micro U or macro, that's the same order that you applied. While writing and approaching paper one, how different it is from like other GS subjects and paper two as well, because all GS subjects and paper two goes in one same direction. It's like more opinion based, theory based, but paper one is very different. How an aspirant should approach that paper differently?
Paper one, because it's technical, you have to be to the point. You have to be very crisp in that paper. You cannot, beat around the bush. If you do not know a model, you do not know a model. I mean, there's no way that you can disguise that lack of knowledge to the examiner. In other papers, you do have a slight leeway. I mean, you can, you should not, but one can still beat around the bush a bit to get some marks. I mean, in the exam, everyone is as desperate as possible to get every half a mark. But paper one does not give you that leeway because it's a technical paper. So I mean, there will be questions in the paper, in the first paper, where you will not know the model, like despite having a lot of options within the paper to attempt some questions. But बहुत बार you will be stuck that okay, I have to attempt these three questions, but even in these three questions, I'm not sure of a couple of questions, or I know the questions, but I'm not sure entirely of those questions. Yeah, kuch questions, some of the questions may be a bit, um, not model based, but rather, descriptive. So those things, that dilemma will be there, and one has to be careful about. One has to just accept them. I mean, you prepare as much as you can, but I would strongly advise aspirants to not run after trying to cover every model under the sun. It's not possible. It's not advisable. You will have to be okay with missing a question or two in the exam. So try and maximize whatever. See, in paper one, the good part is that 90% of the paper is quite predictable. You will have the same models, the same questions being asked year after year. So be absolutely sure that when a question is asked from those models, you will bang it. You will just nail the paper, nail those questions, and get the most of the marks possible out of those. Regarding the 2 3 4 questions which will be slightly tricky, I mean, it's a civil services exam. You have to accept that some paper questions will be like that. You just have to try and make the most of that situation, by either you will have to completely skip it. I remember in one question in my exam, I had to completely skip it. I just had no idea. It was in the compulsory part, not in the optionals also. So I mean, that's just how the uh, paper goes. So
So do you think it leaves a bad impression, like a person is not able to complete the paper, or you said that two, three questions will be like bouncer. You have to leave that, or you have to save time.
Not being able to complete the paper and not knowing some questions, they're two different things. I don't think the exam gives you that leeway that you're not able to attempt all the questions. You do have to attempt all the questions. Within that, there will be some questions which you will not know the answer to, and it's okay to skip them. But I have still gone through those questions. Not being able to complete means that I could not even attempt that question. So that's a different side. So I think the first challenge for everyone has to be that they have to write, at least try and write the answers to every question. If you are not able to write the answer to every question because you do not know that, that's okay. But because time ran out, that's not okay. So I mean, it does not leave a bad impression. I think there are different schools of thought. Some people, they try to shift the GS philosophy to the optional paper also, that, no matter what the question is, you do write something in that, kuch to marks mil jayenge. I am from a different school of thought. Ki in the optional paper, it does not work like that. You have to come across as a bit more professional in that paper. That if you do not know, have the humility to accept to the examiner that you do not know that question and just move on.
Yeah, exactly. It's like nothing to make a fool of.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Let me accept that. One thing you said that paper one is 80% repetitive in terms of theme. Obviously, UPSC does not repeat the exact questions. Uh, if I integrate current affairs now in paper one and paper two, obviously paper two current affairs is heavy, but we have seen in past 10 years, UPSC is not asking direct current affairs. So how an aspirant should write current affairs, integrate current affairs in paper one and paper two both?
so paper one, it's slightly tricky when you have a model, and this is a good way to look at economics also. I mean, it's just not a bunch of academicians debating endlessly over mathematics symbols. I mean, it has a very real connection to the quote unquote real world. So whenever you are studying a model, be very conscious of how it impacts, how it helps you understand the real world. So there will be some phenomenon happening or something which has happened recently which you can type to that particular model. This exercise should be done as you're preparing for the exam. So that in the exam, when you're trying to explain a particular model, you can just show to the examiner that, look, I understand the connections between these models, these theoretical models, and the real world. So, for example, in macroeconomy, the monetary fiscal policy linkage. I mean, the current debate that is going on between the RBI and the Ministry of Finance, it's a very good example of that. So you can just cite that how the monetary fiscal mix should impact policy making, or how does that impact policy making, inflation targeting, and all those stuff. I mean, so in paper one, you have to consciously, keep linking it to anything that is happening around you and how you can explain that using, say, a theoretical model. International economics, it's fairly easy to do. A lot of international trade can be explained using some of the other models. The books themselves, they have a lot of these examples. So I would advise you use that example, but you use that example to move on to another example which you have personalized for yourself, so which will be unique to you. So do not just cite an example which is there in the book. I mean, because you have to assume that out of 250 odd students who write the mains using economics, some 180 odd will be using that example. So just try and come up with something of your own. In paper two, it's very easy. I mean, I don't think that questions are divorced from current affairs. I think they're fairly still based on issues which are happening right now. That makes it more challenging, because if it's a static question, then everyone is prepared for that question. It's been happening, it's everyone knows about that, but they're asking more and more questions. So I remember, I think in our year there was a question on Atmanirbhar Bharat in paper one, and how to explain that using some models or something. So they're using a lot of current issues and asking you to explain that using economic models. So you have to, while preparing, you have to keep that in your mind, and actively look out for those connections.
Yes, exactly. Because exam is all about relativity. If you write better examples, you will be showcase yourself as like a well-read aspirant.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. So yes, moving from current affairs to like that's learning. People think that we'll start writing answers once we will complete the syllabus. As like many toppers said, there's no point of time you will feel that my syllabus has been completed. What was your experience with answer writing? I just want to like keep this question very open about answer writing. It's like whenever I guide my students of economics optional, I always say, okay, learning is one thing and writing answer is the second thing. So one part we have already discussed, the source is learning. The second part is equally very important, or I would say more important, because whatever you know here, if you can't represent on paper, it's like worthless. So how did you prepare for answer writing? How many answers you were writing? What was your approach, like writing one or two answer or writing full test? How many answers you have written? So enlighten the aspirants more on answer writing.
I honestly don't think answer writing is, something which is, that big a monster. I mean, a lot of specialized coaching institutes, they have been parading this as the gospel truth, that answer writing is the king, and it's the more important part of the preparation. I don't think so. Look, firstly, from a slightly bigger perspective, you have to understand that in this exam, no matter how brilliant you are, the ex ante probability of you not clearing the exam will always be far, far higher than you clearing the exam. So, suppose you do not clear the exam. In that case, what will be the skill which will be far more valuable to you after you have gotten out of this cycle? Is it some ability to write answers in a certain manner which suits a particular exam? Or is it the knowledge that you get from preparing for this exam? I think it's the latter, the knowledge. So I think in any case, the part of preparation should have much more focus, rather than say, answer writing. I think if you have the knowledge in your brain, any graduate can write decent answers. I don't think that UPSC puts that big a premium on, how, if you have written in points or paragraphs, or how flowery your language is, or anything of that sort. However, when it comes to answer writing, there are certain things which are important. See, you are writing this exam not just for any job. You're writing this exam for a very particular specialized job in the government of holding the highest bureaucratic offices, right? And those offices require you to, present yourself in a certain manner. So this exam tests that ability. So say if you are an officer and you have to present a note to anyone, say you have to present a note to your superior, immediate superior, or you have to present a note to the cabinet, or you have to present a note just for discussion to anyone. That note has to be concise, that note has to be clear, it has to be crisp, it has to also convey everything that it is supposed to do without any word extra in that. So UPSC expects you to have that ability to present your views in a similar manner if you are preparing for that job. So I think that's that. I mean, that's all the answer writing should focus on, really. I mean, you get a question, you are asked to express your views on that. How clearly can you express your views on that?
Exactly, I understand
So
totally.
yeah.
Uh, Moving from answer writing to more broader perspective, like UPSC gives two things, syllabus and PYQs. How did you use that, and how you will recommend to the aspirants to use syllabus and PYQs?
Syllabus and PYQs are absolutely essential. I mean, they are your compass in this exam, the vast unknown tracks of this exam. So, first of all, you look at the syllabus. I mean, understand the topics. The UPSC does a great job in explaining the areas which are going to be covered in this exam. Although, I mean, it it's still very vague. I mean, it just specifies the name of the topic, but within that, what is the scope? It does not mention that. So. You look at the syllabus, and then to understand the extent to which that syllabus can be tested, you have to look at the past year papers. So for example, if you are given, say, inflation as a particular topic in the syllabus, so what does RBI mean, what does the UPSC mean by inflation? So for that, you need the past year questions to tell you of how deep you must go in that particular area. So in that sense, the PYQs and syllabus, they become very important. PYQs are also a great source of practice questions, especially in economics, because it does have a sense of repeatability to it. So you have to keep on looking at PYQs, keep on practicing them. So yeah, absolutely crucial.
I understand. Going on a more broader perspective, we're talking about optional. Now we'll see mains, and after that, like we have interview, and before that we have prelims. How helpful economics is? Like, what was your interview conversation like? Was it majorly around economics, or how helpful economics in the interview?
I was not asked questions on economics per se in my interview. I mean, I was working at a research institute while my interview was going on. So uh, I was asked a lot of questions on financial markets. Weirdly, I don't understand why, but I was working at an institute related to public finance. But they asked me questions on finance. So I don't know why, but not on, say, the core economics part of it. I was not asked questions on that. So again, but that is something which is very particular to a particular candidate. So you should not generalize that. You do prepare for everything while you're preparing for the interview. You do prepare, keeping that you may be asked regarding your optional also. So you have to keep that in mind. For the interview, I mean, for the students who have qualified mains this year and are appearing for the interview, all the best to them, first of all. Secondly, the focus should primarily be on paper two, the Indian economy part of it. You must be very, very up to date with everything that is happening, not just in the Indian economy, but also in the global economy. So, reading good newspapers from that particular point of view, from you're reading good blogs, if you can find a few on the internet, magazines like The Economist and all, if you can approach them, if you can access them. Great starting points to have global economic points of view. Reports of, say, the RBI, the Ministry of Finance, some research institutes like the NIPFP, these institutes, their reports on the latest economic happenings, great places to start with for the interview. For the paper one, I think just a brief scanning of the models. I mean, you must have prepared for them fairly well if you have qualified mains. Then just a brief revision of them is enough. Of course, in the interview, they won't ask you to draw the models or anything. They will just ask you the gist of it. So if you have some idea about it, it's I mean, it's done. If they ask you a very esoteric model, a very weird model, you can simply be humble enough and say, "Ki, sir, I'm sorry, sir or ma'am, I don't know about this particular model," and that's absolutely okay. Do not try to lie in the interview. If you do not know, then you do not know.
And regarding prelims like economics, we have seen like 15 to 20 questions are always there of economics or economics related current affairs. So how helpful economics option in prelims?
Not at all. I mean, it's completely different from what is happening for mains and everything. So economics optional does not really help in prelims, and it's not supposed to. I mean, prelims is just a screening test, and it should be designed in such a way that no particular optional should give you an advantage in that. Of course, some optionals, say like geography or history, may give you a certain edge in prelims, but I think by and large, no particular optional gives you that advantage.
One last question, Yash. That is like all before crossing that line. Now I'm asking the question after crossing that line. So since 2021, how's life in services and how helpful like is like optional affect your cadre or department or something like that?
Not at all. I mean, once you have cleared the exam, you're all in the same pool. You're the batch, and as a batch, you do not get any special treatment based on either your rank or your optionals or anything. It's just your performance that starts mattering. So at least, I mean, that's what my experience has been so far. In any case, in the initial years of service, for the first 9 10 years, it's a pretty conveyor belt sort of a job. So you move from one post to another post based on the number of years that you have served, and your performance, I mean, in some exceptional cases it may be taken into account, but by and large it's a pretty set pattern. So you are promoted from, say, a probationer, you move to becoming the SDM in the IAS, and then from the SDM you become the ADM or CO Zilla Parishad, depending upon which cadre you are, and then you become the collector. So, or commissioner, municipal corporation. So I think that's the set pattern for most of the states in the initial 8 to 10 years of your service. After that, you move to the secretariat levels, where your background may be taken into account, but I don't think so that it's being taken into account currently.
Okay, yes, that's it from our side. Thank you so much for taking out time from your busy schedule. And we are really thankful to you on behalf of all the aspirants of especially economics optional background. I really want to thank you for your time and you are here to present your thoughts for like last 30 minutes. Thank you so much, Yash.
No issues. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.